Hi, my name is Brant Red, and I'm going to show you how you can analyze the COVID-19 data for yourself using Microsoft Excel. I also recommend a companion video to this where I show you how to do a similar analysis using Tableau. So Johns Hopkins University posts the COVID-19 data daily. They have a massive data collection effort that's collecting it from agencies and organizations worldwide and consolidating it into one daily report of the number of diagnosed cases of COVID-19, the number of deaths due to COVID-19, and they also report recovered cases, although that data is not terribly reliable, so we won't be getting into the recovered cases today. So they report this data on a repository on GitHub, but the data is in a format that's not very convenient for analysis on Excel or Tableau. Other tools may accept the data more easily. And so I wrote an open source tool for converting that data into a more convenient format. So it reads the data from the GitHub repository, converts it into a convenient form, and writes it to a file on your local hard drive. I run that program every day or after Johns Hopkins posts the data, and you can download it from my website at either of these two links. This is the worldwide data, and then this is the US time series data that's there. But I'm going to show you how you can run the program for yourself to download the data, then how to load that into Excel, and how to produce graphs so that you can interpret the data yourself. So let's get into it. So the tool is called Read and Convert Data, COVID-19 data. It's a command line tool, so you can see I have a Windows command line up here. And the -H command tells you to give the help, which is what you're just seeing here, the help screen for the program. And what you can do is you specify the output file name of what you're going to do, and then the options that control that output. And you can do multiple outputs, so you can extract multiple different filters in one run. In our case, we are going to extract the US data. So this is our command, read and convert COVID-19 data. The output file is COVID-19 time series us.csv. The output format is always CSV, so you should use that extension on your file name. And in this case, we're doing one filter. We're filtering by US for the country. So we're only going to get US data on here, and it's going to strip the others out. Now, even if you don't watch the whole thing, you could watch the beginning of my video on doing this in Tableau, because in that case, we're going to be extracting worldwide data and aggregating it by country. In this case, we're not doing any aggregation. If we wanted to aggregate, we could do by state, and that would aggregate the data to the individual states so that we would have numbers for each state. In this case, we're not going to aggregate by state, which means that it's going to give us the most fine-grained data, which is by county. We will do aggregation within Excel, but we're not going to do that at the extract stage. So I run that command, and you can see it's reading each of the daily reports from Johns Hopkins, and collected all that data into memory, then wrote it out as the COVID-19 time series us.csv. All right, great. Well, then let's look at that data. Here is the file that it just wrote out. And CSV files are typically associated with Microsoft Excel, unless you've changed that, because Excel can read them easily. So I'm just going to double click that file and launch Excel. And we'll get to see what the data looks like. Here we go. It is organized by date in the first column, by county or district. In the case of the United States, it's always counties, by province or state. In the case of the United States, it's always states, but other countries have provinces. And then the country, since we filtered by the US, the only country that shows up in this data is, again, the United States. Now we have the total confirmed cases, the total deaths, new confirmed cases, new deaths, meaning deaths from overnight. And I have to pause here a moment and say it's rather sobering that we're talking about actual death counts here. But on the other hand, that is also why I am doing this analysis, in order to help us all try to deal with what is really a worldwide crisis. And then Delta confirmed and Delta deaths, that's the change in new confirmed from the previous day, and the change in the new deaths from the previous day. Those can be used to do some kinds of trend analysis, but we're going to be ignoring them for the analysis we're doing today. Now you can see that the early data from early February is not really counties and districts. We're actually looking at cities here. And that's the way that the Johns Hopkins data has been provided to us. But as we move further down in our list into later dates, it starts to be conventional counties when they started collecting data countywide. The other thing you'll notice between the early and the later data in this series is that we have latitude and longitude reports of the location, which we did not have in the early data that came in. That came in later on as Johns Hopkins updated that. As we graph, sometimes when you run a graph of certain areas, you'll find that there's some bumps in the graphs that are related to changes in how the data were collected or aggregated and by the various agencies out there in the world. We sort of have to ignore some of those bumps in the data and just understand that it has to do with some of those changes in reporting. So here we go then. We have this data, but we need to be able to aggregate it by state or by the countrywide in order to actually see a graph on that time series. How do we do that in Excel? You do it with a pivot table. So we will insert a pivot table here. If you haven't used a pivot table before, there are lots of good videos out on YouTube and other places on how to use pivot tables. I'm going to show you one example. So we've just created a pivot table based on that data that was in the other sheet. And what we want to do now is select date for our rows. You can see that I clicked on date and it populated our rows with that. And now we have rows for each date in here, and they're aggregated by month. That month aggregation can be useful sometimes, but for our purposes, it's getting in the way. So we're going to get rid of the months field and only go by date. And so now we can see our first observation at the beginning of February all the way up to our most recent observation is today, the 9th of April. We were able to get it that soon because I'm doing this in the evening after Johns Hopkins already published their daily update for the day. So there you have it. That's our latest data. Now, we need to look at what values we want to analyze by, and we'll start with the total confirmed, and we'll drag that into the values field. And there we have, these are the sum of the total confirmed. So this is nationwide. This is for the total United States. So it's summing those up. Now there are other aggregations. You can do averages and those kinds of things, but for the COVID-19 data, a sum is the correct use. And you can see it starting from a mere 8 early on in our data series and jumping all the way up to over 46,000, or 461, sorry, not 46, but 461,000 confirmed cases as of today. So let's then add to this. We'll add the new confirmed information and the total deaths to our series here. And again, we can see 32,000 new confirmed cases since yesterday. So that's why we have our public officials so concerned, is that we see that rapid growth going on in the rapid spread of the virus still. Now, in order to see trends, of course, we'd like to see a graph of this information. So we'll select any field in the table. In this case, we happen to be in the upper left, and that's good enough. And we'll go to Insert, and we're going to insert a line graph. So we put in a line graph. I'm going to expand this. We could have put this in a new sheet, and that might be more convenient for exploring or reporting, but for our purposes on this demo, it's handy to put it right here. So I'm actually laying it right on top of the data that we're using, and so that we can easily see the graph that's showing here. Here you can see those numbers that we just looked at. Most recent, 461,000 confirmed cases in the United States. New confirmed cases overnight, 32,000, and total deaths, over 16,000 in the United States have died of coronavirus so far since the crisis began. It's sobering to even make that statement, and I have to say my sympathies and prayers go out to all those who have lost loved ones. I wish I could say this is over, but there will be many more before we're finished. Well, then with that, let's say, okay, well, what if we want to look at a particular state or locality? Well, you use filters for that. So here we're going to drag the province or state into our filters. And that brings up this little filter bar here at the top. And I will jump into that, and let's go look at New York City. So here, or New York State, I should say, although it's dominated by New York City, but this is the state of New York. And we can see that they are accounting for a sizable fraction of the nationwide situation, with a total of 161, almost 162,000 confirmed cases. New confirmed cases are at over 10,000 just overnight of new confirmed cases. Now, looking at this line, the new confirmed cases, obviously we want to see this line level out, since it's the total confirmed over time. It will never go down, but we want to see that level out and go flat. The new confirmed cases, we want to see that level out and then decline back to zero. And in the case of New York, it's still rising at a pretty consistent rate compared to historically. So 10,718 new confirmed cases just since yesterday in the state of New York, and deaths, over 7,000 deaths just since yesterday in the state of New York. That gives you an idea of what we're up against. Rather concerning. So let's look at another locality. I happen to be a resident of the state of Utah, so we'll change this to Utah and see how things are going locally for me. In Utah, we can see that we have 1,800. We're a couple of orders of magnitude lower than we've been looking at so far. Utah is also a much lower population state than New York, but 1,800 total confirmed cases. We can see that overnight, I'm guessing that this is one of those data reporting anomalies because we're seeing that there were no new cases reported in the last 24 hours. Now, I think that there probably have been some reported, and then the total cases, the total deaths in the state of Utah are 13. Well, what if you're really interested in your own locality? This is something that's hard to get to from the news media because they're covering a lot larger area, but the Johns Hopkins data will get you to that level. And so we're going to bring in the county, not the country. Notice that's country region. This is county up here. We'll bring in our county as another filter. And if I look at that drop down, we'll see all the counties in the United States. And there are some states that have counties that are named the same as a county in another state. So to filter properly on this, you need to pick both a state and a county filter. Otherwise, you might end up with the same name of a county across two different states. So you'd be aggregating two different counties. That wouldn't be correct. So make sure that you use the state and the county filters together on this. So now we're looking at Utah County, and now we're even at lower numbers. We have 267 cases so far in our county. Again, Utah doesn't seem to have reported any new cases overnight. That's gone to zero, but I'm confident that there are new cases, so it has something to do with the reporting. And then we look at, we've only had 2 deaths in Utah County so far. And even though that's small, my heart goes out to those families who lost loved ones in the midst of this crisis. So there you have it. This is how you analyze your data using Excel, and how you can get local information that you might not be able to get otherwise. So I hope this is helpful to everyone out there. My hopes and prayers go out to everyone, and let's all stay safe, continue good practices so that we can conquer this virus. Thank you.